Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack here. It's now Friday, the 26th of July, 2024. The weekend is here. All right. Well, we got a lot to talk about today. It is almost time. We're going to put July on the shelf, and then we're going to unbox August and see what it has to hold for us. And if the ensembles from some of the models are to be believed, we could start off rather busy as we get started with the 8th month of the year. All right, so let's see what we got. At least for this weekend, nothing to worry about, and probably for the next 7 days, at least the National Hurricane Center is indicating that. Very specifically there, tropical cyclone activity not expected during the next 7 days, and that, of course, does take us into the early part of August. Meanwhile, in the East Pack, we've got Bud over here still hanging on just barely. And then it's going to run into a less thermodynamically favored area. Just a lot of fancy ways of saying it's moving into cooler water and less moisture and all that good stuff, and it'll die away. Meanwhile, we got another area trying to develop here. 30% chance over the next 7 days to the south of the Mexican coastline. Some indications are that maybe this tries to get close to the Baja. We'll have to see. There are a few models that are indicating this could be interesting closer to Mexico and the southwest United States. Don't want to read too much into it just yet. In fact, we'll look at it together in just a little bit on some of the modeling. All right, so on the satellite imagery, the animation here, courtesy of Tropical Tidbits, right there, that's Bud dying away in the East Pack. Again, water temperature is colder out there, and there's just not much energy for that to keep hanging on. More energy trying to come together down here, though. That's where the National Hurricane Center has things outlooked over the next week or so. But look at all this moisture. It's almost like a subtropical jet through here, streaking across way out into the Atlantic even. And it's just been keeping things rainy. I mean, I saw more heavy rain in the Houston area, I do believe, southeast Texas again. And it's been really wet, as I alluded to, here in eastern North Carolina. And hopefully all of that is getting ready to go away. I'm just done with it. We got to get some dry, warm, summery weather, not this cloudy mess that we've had as of late. Although we have at least hopefully put a dent in some of the drought conditions that we have been seeing in parts of the Carolinas. Shifting the satellite view to the east, yep, we still have a very prevalent Saharan air layer. But I want to point something out on this, and then I'm going to show you quite the staggering. It's a satellite image, but it's a different image. I'll show you in just a minute from the University of Wisconsin. But for now, you can clearly see how the jet out here is just pushing all this Saharan air out into the Atlantic, and it's just eroding away these clouds. But look how far north it is. That's 20 degrees north latitude right there. And then farther to the south, though, that's your monsoon trough setting up. And it's getting a little bit more robust. It's getting a little thicker, more pronounced, gradually getting its act together, and that'll act as a focusing mechanism. The trades are going to slow down here, and eventually these tropical waves will be coming off with less Saharan air to deal with, and they can kind of get tangled up with the monsoon trough, and they curl up, they bundle that energy, and then off they go westward across the Atlantic, south of a big fat ridge, subtropical ridge as we call it, the Bermuda Azores High. I mean, that's what steered Beryl all the way across from Africa right into Texas, with lots of stops in between that in some cases, of course, as you know, were very devastating. Now check this out. This is quite, wow, that's a lot of colors, isn't it? So this is really interesting. This is the Saharan air layer analysis from the University of Wisconsin, their Cooperative Institute for Meteorological Satellite Studies, and we use the color black here to kind of highlight everything. You look at this and you go, oh, forget it. Hurricane season's done. They blew it. Nobody accounted for the dust and the dry air. To which I say, hold on just a minute. You got to know your geography. Again, there's 20 degrees north latitude right there. So 20 north latitude, and point south down to about 10, pretty much from Africa all the way to the Caribbean. This is your MDR, your main development region, right through here. All right? Where is the worst, or the most prevalent, depending on how you look at it? Hey, you might even say it the best, because it certainly does thwart hurricane development. But where is the most robust Saharan air, according to the legend down here? It's easy to spot. It's right up here. And it's well north of 20 latitude. These are the Canary Islands, for goodness sakes. We don't have hurricane development up here. Now, sometimes they'll come off and then turn this way, but this is not our Genesis region. All this down here is, and while, yes, there is abundant dust and dry air, especially the dry air, it's not as prevalent as it is much farther to the north. I mean, this is just ridiculous. I don't know how there's even a cloud underneath any of this or mixed in with it. And there's that monsoon trough cutting through everything, and that's a moisture like a tail. It really is. It's fascinating how this works. And magically, as we get into August, this is just going to gradually go away. We'll have a few outbreaks here and there that'll roll off, but what's here now won't necessarily be here in just a few weeks' time. If that, maybe even a couple weeks, things could be drastically different, especially that we know how warm the ocean temperatures are at the surface. These are your anomalies from Africa all the way over to the Gulf of Mexico and beyond. The main development region much warmer, at least a degree Celsius warmer than the 30-year average. Meanwhile, the La Nina trying to come on here. These are your instability waves through here. Pretty cool to see. And the currents underneath the Pacific out here, very fascinating. And the cold water trying to upwell itself from below with those strong trade winds coming out here, keeping everything mixed and the conveyor belt going. It's all headed into the direction of exactly what we thought. And keeping on with this theme of showing the Florida Tropics account over here on Twitter. The ensembles, really aggressive last night. More than half of the members are now showing some kind of development. This, of course, from the ECMWF and its ensemble group, meaning you got the operational and then all of these sort of what-if scenarios. And there are a few in here that are hurricane-ish. 984, 989, 982 sitting over here, 983. You know, you can pick those out. Nothing really intense, but that's not the point. Way, 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 way too much attention. And even I can fall into this trap from time to time, is paid focusing on one question. Oh, how strong is it going to be? That's not the question anyone should ever ask, and I really sincerely mean that. The question you should ask, what impacts will this bring to me? And I know that sounds so cliche, but you got to hang on with me here and understand it's not about the pressure or the wind, it's about the impacts to you. If I can get the finger right all the way in there and poke you in the eye, I would say, wake up, understand that. So don't look at this and go, dude, none of those show anything of any intensity. Why are you even talking about it? You're missing the point. The point is the model, the ECMWF, consistently trying to brew something up from a tropical wave interacting possibly with the monsoon trough, gathering some moisture, and then coming to life much closer to land areas in the southwest Atlantic as we get into the early part of August. That's what the message is. Not necessarily, oh, it looks like there probably wouldn't even be a hurricane, so who cares? Believe me, 20, 30 inches of rain is enough. Heck, even in southeast Florida, 6 inches of rain in an afternoon. Houston, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Rain is an impact. Just the fact that a tropical system could be there has major disruptions on airlines, the cruise industry, travel on the interstate highways, and so forth. And that is what we need to be looking at. What kind of disruption could something, whatever we decide to call it as humans, comes our way? Whatever it is, a depression or a Cat 5 hurricane and anything in between, we need to be focusing on the impacts. And the models are starting to wake up and say there could be something coming, and with it, there would be impacts. Alrighty? Going on with this is almost a day old now, but still relevant to show you from our friend Eric Webb. And he's been tracking that tropical wave too. Let's read the tweet first, and then we'll take a look at the graphics that Eric has included with his post. Not much has changed, Eric says, over the last day or so with the tropical wave emerging off the coast of Africa. The overall environment is favorable for some, and let's highlight this, modest and gradual development over the coming week or so. And that would, of course, get us into early August. It does have favorable moisture, generally. It's got to work that Saharan air layer out. There looks like there's going to be a little convective pulse coming through what we call a Kelvin wave, a convectively coupled Kelvin wave. It's just a smaller period of time of more favorable conditions. Contrast that to the MJO, which is a much larger time frame and spatially a larger area of favorability. A convective coupled Kelvin wave, I often say, is like a shot of Red Bull. It's temporary. Record high sea surface temperatures, we know all about that. And this is important, lighter than average wind shear forecast for the next 7+ days. Models, especially the GFS and the GEFS, the ensemble part of the GFS, may be overreacting to the suppressed phase of the Kelvin wave passing over the wave at the moment. That's why the GFS doesn't show much. Potentially. I mean, we don't know for sure, but we can speculate. And the Climate Prediction Center also has a slight 20% chance of some tropical development in the west central Atlantic early next week. And we can see that here. This is experimental, but nevertheless, these candy cane looking areas right through here. This is the first period of time going through August the 6th. And the second period of time takes us through August 13th. More of a chance of development deep into the tropics. And of course, the East Pac stays busy as well. So, it's not just Eric or Florida Tropics or other people on Twitter. This is the Climate Prediction Center that Eric is citing. This is a graph that kind of shows us the progression of some of these features, and the green is generally favorable on this particular chart. And then finally, and this is interesting to me, yes, a pretty drastic reduction in the overall wind shear. Blue is favorable. You don't see much red and orange. That's confined to the subtropics. Way up here, almost like a tut sitting up here, tropical upper tropospheric trough, whereas down here, clockwise rotation in the upper atmosphere, very light winds overall, anomalously so, meaning that it is more favorable than normal. So it kind of lends to the idea that maybe something tries to develop. And that's what we've been talking about the last few days here. So let's go back to last night's run of the Euro. This is 0Z last night. In other words, it was initialized 0Z or Zulu time, 8 p.m. Eastern time. And let's particularly watch, let's use blue to make everything pop. There's a nice area of energy here in the initialization. Huge area, big pouch as we call it. Moisture and energy, some vorticity down there. So let's see what happens. Let's move this out to the next week or so and watch as things progress. What I find interesting is we're not seeing these systems here just race across the main development region, owing to the fact that we don't have blasting trade winds through there to sort of tear things apart and not allow them to consolidate. In fact, if we move this around, the slider, nothing moves very fast at all. Oh, and by the way, last night it still shows this little doodad off the mid-Atlantic, probably a non-tropical low, but something to pay attention to. I mentioned it yesterday. You do want to watch that because it tries to pinwheel in on last night's run right in there to western Long Island up there. We'll see. Probably nothing much to worry about tropically, but if you've got boating interest through here, that's something. That's a storm system. That's a little weather feature you're going to want to watch. Down in the deep tropics, though, just not much coming until we get out to about day 5 and 6, and then the wave starts to amplify right there. You keep an eye on it, see what happens. We go through, that's again around day 5, day 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and something tries to develop there and move in towards maybe Mobile, Alabama on this operational run. It's just one run, nothing too significant there, but it's still showing it. And this is the overall, again, message. We're getting more amplification of these systems with each run the further into time we go. And we get into August. Climatologically, things get more favorable. These waves of energy coming through, the MJO, these little smaller convectively coupled Kelvin waves, all of that's eventually going to add up, and we're going to get something to try to pop down here. Now, this is the today version of the GFS, 12Z from today. GFS right there, just making sure you're following along. It still isn't showing very much at all. We'll run this out to, again, why not, a couple weeks out just to show you how things progress. Not a lot in the Atlantic Basin, as you can see, a few areas. Now, that's a huge pouch right there. Holy cow. That's a giant area of energy that comes off. This is more than, it's almost 10 days out. Let's just look at it that way. So we're in early August. Have to see where that ends up, right? But you don't see anything robust. Nothing jumps out as being particularly concerning, but the background state is gradually getting more and more favorable. And let's look at the GFS real quick on its moisture and see how that's doing. There's all your brown, which is very low humidity values in the mid-levels. Then there's that monsoon trough I was telling you about. Very moist and very humid at the mid-levels down there. So let's see how everything progresses over the coming days to 2 weeks. You see that little curlicue that comes off Africa? That's a tropical wave right there. Very easy to spot, and it rolls out. Doesn't do much because it's just surrounded by too much African dust and dry air. But you never know. Like eventually this stuff's going to ease up, as the Euro is trying to show anyway. And when it does so, we're going to have a very busy time of it. So it's interesting. We still have the sort of split decision, as usual. In this case, the Euro is more aggressive than the GFS. Usually the GFS is the one trying to spit out storms, and people start to mock it and so forth. But nothing solid yet. That's the good news. And I don't want to say it's the bad news on the other hand or whatever, but we do know that inevitably as we get into August, naturally things should start to become more favorable, and then one of these will take root and get anchored in, and we could have some problems. So we got to keep watching. It's what it's all about. It's literally the watch pot never boils syndrome, right? All right. Coming up, 20 years since this. And I thought I want to kind of go back in time just a little bit and introduce you to something that I'll be doing next week as we get to the 20-year anniversary of what we call the Hurricane Landfall Project, our internal, unofficial, back then it was kind of official, field program for how we were going to remotely capture hurricanes and now all kinds of severe weather 20 years later. The other day, I put out this sort of sizzle reel, movie trailer type thing of 25 years of HurricaneTrack, the brand, the website, all that being on the internet. We started HurricaneTrack, or I did, in 1999, and it literally was me, like one person, and now it's grown into a big community that's just tremendous. And I've had so much fun and, meeting people and getting innovation going and whatnot. But 20 years ago, so a few years obviously after I started the website, as technology got better and our funding was better, we were working with Lowe's and Sprint way back in the day. So we had all kinds of funding to do pretty much anything we wanted to do. We're back there again now thanks to crowdfunding and my relationship with Fox Weather as an example, and then some partners like we have with Quick Dams. But back in the day, we were really trying to break some ground, and that started in 2004. So teasing it, next week on July 31st, I'm going to show you the evolution of where it all began. July 31st, 2004, so coming up on 20 years ago, that's hard to believe, we got the first advisory on what would become Hurricane Alex. And my team, and at the time it was myself, Jesse Bass, and a gentleman who is no longer with us, unfortunately, John Van Pelt of stormstudy.com. The three of us began this amazing journey of the Hurricane Landfall Project on the Outer Banks of North Carolina, specifically in Hatteras Village, and it would end 6 or so weeks later with myself and a gentleman named Eddie Smith, who is very much still with us, and in between the amazing adventures that we all had, including Charlie, which really led to the speeding up of this idea. Like, I literally said a pretty, a word that we don't say here on this channel because it's just not, I'll just say it sounds like duck. All right? And I said the blank, if I'm ever going to do this again, it's in the documentary with a bleep. But Charlie was a wake-up call, and it all began with Alex. And we just had no idea of how that 6 weeks would go. So anyway, starting on the 31st, not quite in real time, because we don't have, 6 weeks to do this every single day in real time. But every day as we go through, I am going to at least go back and kind of show you how this project evolved, how we eventually came to this. That's from Gulf Shores, Hurricane Ivan, and where we are today, that we're putting little miniature camera boxes and weather stations out, and we're capturing weather events such as hurricanes. That's the pinnacle of what we do, unlike anything that anybody's ever done before. And it's actually helped to inspire other people to do it, which is even better. It's not a competition. It's great that other people are learning and doing stuff like this as well. But that's where it began. 20 years ago, Hurricane Alex, it's trying to drop out here, darn it. There we go. On the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And I will show you as that evolves over the next week or so, and we'll look at the first advisory. We'll go from there. All right? Hey, real quick, I do still have some of these. I forgot to mention this week. If you want one, I got an order yesterday, and that's what prompted me. A gentleman from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, got one, and it's shipped, by the way. If you're watching today, it'll be there Monday. Maybe even tomorrow. You never know. You would think it would be quicker, right? Because it's just down the road. Poster-size hurricane tracking chart. Drew it myself long time ago. It's a true piece of art, a lost art of tracking on paper. Still not too late. We've only had ABC storms this year, right? And you can catch up over in the archives. Look, in fact, it's right there. If you ever miss anything, all the hurricanes are archived back to 1998 right here. So for 2024, you go to Alberto. There was just a few advisories. You can go to Beryl. There was a lot more, but they're all right there. And you can go back if you're bored. It's like putting together a puzzle. Chris was easy. And you can get the advisories and the latitude and longitude right there from the public advisory and plot away on this nice paper tracking map. And then when you fill it all in at the end of this year's hurricane season, you'll have a truly historic document that I made myself a long time ago, back in the very beginnings of my career. So if you want one, I'll put a link to it in today's description. All right? And it's real easy. It's HurricaneTrack.com/track map, all one string, track MAP. But I'll put a link for you if you don't remember that. All right? Have a great weekend. I'm not going to be around Saturday and Sunday, but I will be back Monday, and we will start off the week seeing how this evolves. And, of course, we'll be getting ready to talk about the 20-year anniversary of the Hurricane Landfall Project and August and all of that good stuff. So you guys have a great weekend. Stay safe out there. I'll see you again on Monday. I am Mark Sudduth for Hurricane Track. Yeah, I'll talk to you again on Monday.